So, as an academic, I'm not really sure how to talk for 15 minutes and then listen to 45 minutes of questions, but I'm going to try. So I've constrained my quantity of slides. So I'm actually interested in a whole bunch of areas of cybersecurity because of the time constraint on my speaking. I'm going to just talk about malware a little bit today, but the questions that you guys have later can be about anything that you want, including the topics that you see up there or other things. So I did a talk recently to potential LSU students on career paths in cybersecurity, and I told the truth about my path, and then realized that there were parents in the audience and had to backtrack and say that it's not necessary for you to take my path now. There are other ways of doing this, but my path literally, I'm just telling you this straight up, my path literally was living at Radio Shack in the 1970s and not going to school. So I skipped high school and spent 4 years at Radio Shack, and here I am. So works for me, may not work for you or your kids. So it's a blurry copy because the projector is a little bit low resolution, but just to show you that I am in fact still alive and have old school credentials. That's my receipt for my first floppy drive from Radio Shack, $600, and that shows my first $100 down payment, and I had to pay over the course of 12 months before I could have my 156K floppy drive. Sweeping the lot of the convenience store next door to the Radio Shack for a year to pay that off. So here I am. So I actually attended the University of New Orleans and then went to Ohio State and spent a long time at the University of New Orleans and was recruited to LSU at the beginning of 2017. I'm also a NSA employee, and through a personnel agreement between NSA, formerly NSA and University of New Orleans, and now NSA and LSU. And I primarily support an internship program there where we take juniors, seniors, grad students, give them a provisional top TSSCI security clearance, and then 12 weeks of amazing training. And the reason that we do that is because NSA, like many other organizations, are desperate for cybersecurity employees. So the projection, I mean, no one knows the actual numbers, but many projections exist. I just picked a random one. The projection is something like 1.5 million empty chairs with no cybersecurity person to sit in them. There's an incredible shortage of cybersecurity faculty. We tend to be poached. So I was stolen from UNO, and after I left, some other university in Virginia stole the other cybersecurity person from there, and University of Texas at San Antonio just stole all the people from Mississippi State, and so we're just kind of moving around like dominoes. There's a huge need for cybersecurity people, essentially fighting what can seem like a desperate and impossible task at some points. So I'm just talking about malware a little bit to prime you so that you'll have something to ask me for the 45 minutes of otherwise uncomfortable silence that will be starting in about 10 minutes. So people ask, like, what's up with malware? And I get tired of enumerating all the evil things that malware does because it changes on a day-to-day basis. And I think a better way of thinking about this is just enumerate all the things that you personally don't want to happen to your computer system, and that's exactly what malware will do. Whether the impact of malware is something that destroys data and stuff and has some kind of direct impact on you, or whether it's just kind of the secret use of your computing resources, really depends on the motivation of the people that are doing it to you. As I'll mention in a minute, things have changed radically from the 80s when computer viruses and other kinds of malware were first developed to now, because now there's monetization. So it used to be just hackers in their basement destroying your data so that they could chuckle in their dark basement alone I don't even know why. Well, I'm not personally motivated to hurt other people in that way. But now the motivation is extreme, as you'll see, and everyone, I guess, has a price, and so we'll see that. So I usually do a much more interactive version of this. I'm just showing you some old MS-DOS malware. So literally, this is malware from the 1980s. And you see the thing on the top is maybe the most indicative one. You're infected by this malware, so this guy just keeps walking across your screen. So you try to use your word processor, and the guy just keeps walking in front of the document that you're typing. So not incredibly destructive, and actually that one's pretty easy to get rid of. The one on the bottom, I would have to run interactively, and I can't touch the computer because it's up there. So I've volunteered to just give it a screenshot instead. This is actually a malware slot machine. So you're infected by this malware, and you get something like how many tokens? Like 4 or 5 tokens. And you make the slot machine run. And if you win, your data doesn't get deleted. And if you lose, you lose all the data on your computer system. So these were motivated primarily, again, just by people showing off hacking skills. There's no benefit whatsoever for the guy in the basement for you winning or not winning the slot machine thing. In fact, he doesn't even know whether you win or lose, right? So the motivation is hard to understand. So until very recently, the number one malware threat, the number one motivation for malware was actually ransomware, which I'll come to in a minute. And very, very recently, that's been surpassed by crypto mining. Anyone heard of Bitcoin? I can't see you well, but you probably have heard about it now, right? So the issue with Bitcoin is that the system is based on really computationally expensive problems being solved constantly to verify the transactions that are being made, money being transferred about. And so people are building these giant rigs of machines to do Bitcoin mining. That's the verification of transactions. And these things tend to be in places with cheap electricity like Iceland, where you don't have cooling issues because the computers can be cooled by the fact that it's unbearably cold all the time, plus cheap electricity. But the interesting stat I ran across recently is that the total amount of electricity that's being used to do Bitcoin mining exceeds the total energy expenditure of Nigeria. So I mean, the Bitcoin thing is sort of funny and interesting and quirky and actually useful in a way, but the amount of electricity that we're burning to just throw away computer cycles to move money around is a little bit terrifying, given that global warming isn't true and all that stuff, right? So what does this have to do with malware? Well, rather than building those giant rigs, malware authors have now written computer viruses that harness your computer to do Bitcoin mining so that they can make money. So the only effect you see in this case is that your computer gets really slow. So there's no data loss, but it can get very, very slow. And by harnessing millions of infected computers into giant crypto mining botnets, they make lots and lots of money, and you make nothing, right? More troublesome to you as an individual and to corporations is ransomware, which has slipped into the number 2 slot now. So I wanted to give you some idea of how this has progressed. So the first ransomware we really know about was distributed on floppy storage at an AIDS conference, and people were directed to stick the floppy in their machine and learn some information about HIV education and stuff like that, but it turned out to be ransomware. And what ransomware does is infects your computer system, encrypts the important data files that you would want to have access to, and you pay to get the keys to unlock your data. And so just to answer your question that you'll have later is, like, if you pay, do you get the keys? The answer is yes, because as a business model, it's much better for the malware author if you tell your neighbor that, hey, I got infected, but if I paid and I got my keys back. But look at how primitive this situation was, right? We had no ways of, as evil malware people, the people had really no way of hiding from the law except to go to a non-extradition country like Panama. and demand that you send them a check for $189, and they would mail you the encryption keys back. So that doesn't scale well, and it's a lot of opening things and going to the bank and all that. So malware has progressed, ransomware has progressed now to where it's fully automated. So you open an email attachment that's not what you should have opened, and all your files get encrypted. Or if you're in a corporation and open it, then potentially all the files in the corporation get encrypted. And you're presented with instructions on how to contact the malware authors and pay them. And generally, they're paid in Bitcoin because that's a more anonymous form of currency than mailing stacks of cash or checks or something like that. The situation, I can't do this interactively again. I just have some screenshots, but this has become so so refined that you can actually open a chat session with people who have encrypted your files, explain your situation, plead your case, offer to say pay half if they give you half the encryption keys back. And because of the sensitive nature of the conversation that happens in that chat window, they're actually cybersecurity experts now that specialize only in ransomware negotiation. So I know a ransomware negotiator. He charges $500 an hour to sit in the box and negotiate on your behalf and not get angry. Because usually these guys will also send you a document that outlines their demands, and the demands include things like, first, give us all the money we want, right? For a corporation, that can be upwards of $200,000 for a typical ransomware infection. The other demand that they have is that you treat them, this is a direct quote from one of those documents, you treat them in an amicable fashion at all times, meaning, one wrong word, they just press a button and your keys are gone. You might think that's kind of an aggressive business model, and why would they, lose the opportunity to take your money and stuff like that. But some of the hacking groups that are running these ransomware campaigns are making $40 million a month. So they literally don't care if you don't pay, and if you insult them, it's actually refreshing for them probably to just press X and your data is gone forever. How can they do this, right? So one of the enabling technologies for this, you may have heard about Tor and the darknet and similar technologies. So I have some students planted here. I actually didn't plant them. They just decided to come. But I'm using them as an example. One of those students who I'm ordering not to do this, by the way, but one of those students could literally have a ransomware campaign running on their laptop against one of you guys in here, and you would not be able to identify their location. So these anonymizing overlay networks, which I don't have time to talk about in this right now, but we can talk about in the Q&A if you want, can completely obfuscate the physical location of the person that's handling the campaign. So it could be someone in this room, or it could be someone in Romania or Russia, and we wouldn't know one way or the other. So there's a lot of malware now. So we don't claim to have even a fraction of the available malware, but in our lab in CCT, there's a computer setup where my students are working on malware analysis stuff, and we have 30 million unique malware samples, meaning 30 million different computer viruses on that machine. And that's a small fraction of the spectrum of malware that's there. One of our tasks is to figure out what a lot of that stuff does in a safe way, because we know that some of it's really bad, and some of it walks across your screen, and some of it, takes down nuclear power plants and stuff like that. So I wanted to just scare you a little bit. So there's an interesting conference in New Orleans called the Energy Accounting Conference, and I don't know anything about accounting, but I'm invited there every year to give a terror talk to basically scare the accountants to death. So they're talking about like Form 3556 and stuff, and then I appear and they all turn, shades of white and gray from fear, and then I'm invited back the next year because I don't, whatever. It's very strange. But there are many reasons. There are many reasons to be afraid. So one type of malware that we're seeing increasingly is targeted malware, and this is to get someone in trouble or get them fired or put you in jail or something like that. So we know, I think everyone here is over 18, right? We know of malware samples, for example, that download child pornography and organize it on your computer system and then notify people that it's there. So I mean, that's a quick trip to Angola and learning how to ride horses and do rodeo stuff. It's and your defense against that stuff is expensive and maybe not entirely effective. The malware that I'm showing you, don't look at the words. Just listen. I just wanted something to point at. The malware that I'm illustrating here occurred in a case that I was involved in Australia, and was a targeted malware to get a female employee fired from a corporation. So when the person came to work, whenever she was present in her office, the network logs and other forensic evidence illustrated that she was doing not safe for work stuff, and you can just imagine what that means. So when she appeared, it was not safe for work, not safe for work, not safe for work. She goes to lunch, it stops. She comes back from lunch, not safe for work, not safe for work, all the way till 5 p.m. She leaves, the not safe for work stops. Forensic examination of the machine illustrates that she's doing web browsing and looking at not safe for work stuff, despite the fact that she's been told like over and over and over not to do it. She claims that she's innocent, and because of a very, very determined investigator, far more determined than any person you would ordinarily run into, because of this person's efforts, the malware that was actually targeting her was discovered, and it was running, the reason I have the red arrow there, it was running Internet Explorer, which is a common web browser for Windows, but it was running it without the GUI, so you don't see a window. Internet Explorer is running and automatically surfing porn sites, and you see no evidence whatsoever of this happening. That ends up depositing all the forensic evidence you would expect to find on the machine, and you see network traffic coming in and out, and so that's the only thing that saved her from being fired. So in the summer, I'm in a top secret facility where we aren't allowed to have cell phones or microphones or CD players or basically anything with electrons moving around inside. So I walk in with my clothes and my old watch that is mechanical, and that's about it. And the young employees are always really irritated by this because everyone likes having their phone. Like if I have to get something, a phone number or something, I have to go leave the facility, badge out, go to the parking lot, open my car, sit in my car in the air conditioning because it's hot, turn my phone on, figure out what's happening, turn the phone off, shut the car off, go back inside, badge in. The reason we have to do all this is because there's virtually no way to detect and eliminate really nasty strains of malware that we're seeing on mobile phones now. So some of these kinds of surveillance things, for example, are installed by the Chinese government on Android phones. Like straight out of the factory, this malware is there and can't be removed. So this is a proof of concept, which gives you kind of the basic idea, right? So this is a application that poses as a new camera. So like the first thing I do, right, when I get a new iPhone is download a better camera app. This one runs on Android, and it just activates your camera periodically and takes random pictures. So you wouldn't think that would be a big deal because if I'm standing here on the phone, it takes a picture, it shoots the ceiling or something, right? So completely random, except that these pictures are then exfiltrated and using some fancy 3D scene reconstruction software are stitched together into 3D models of the room that the pictures are being taken in. So those flat 2D images are stitched together into this 3D image. So now you can see the problems that this would cause in any kind of, not even a top secret facility, right? How about your house, right? Do you want people to know like how to quickly get in and out of your house and where your money is and stuff like that, like so they can just snatch and grab. So this is your one Android app from the App Store away from total surveillance of your house. So so the students that have sneaked in here and a few other students and basically everyone working on malware is trying frantically to detect and understand and try to do defensive measures against these kinds of things, and that's sort of our 24-hour-a-day panic. I sleep fine because I've stopped caring. I'm dead inside now, so you may not yet be dead inside. So I'm really, really hopeful that this won't be 45 minutes of crickets. I do have a black belt in uncomfortable silence, so I'm good. Thank you.